So I'm thinking of what to say, how to open this video, I'm going to open like this. So, look, I know I've defended this film, but, said some things, but then leaned more towards negative, but, yeah. The more I'm thinking about it as years go on, the more I'm thinking of this movie. This movie was a mistake. This remake was a mistake, and the original first adaptation in 2012 versus 2002 was a mistake. Both versions of the origin story were mistakes, and they should have never happened for a Spider-Man origin story, because I hate them both as much as the other one. Granted, Spider-Man's written much better as a more rounded, relatable character in the 2012 one, but the origin is more pace shitty, and this becomes a villain of the week movie. That who can Spider-Man face rather than how does Spider-Man become the person we know from the comics. So it leans more towards that than the original one did from 2002. Well, why don't you take out my testicles while you're at it, Spider-Man, and keep it hostage from me and put it in a box, since you so obviously hate me. So yeah, that's what I gotta see about this movie. About both versions of the film, the origin story from 2012 and 2002, Spider-Man versus The Amazing Spider-Man. So we'll say the movie is at first off to a good start by showing Peter as a young boy playing with his parents, and then something goes wrong, someone breaks into the house, and he lives with Aunt May. Then the time jump happens, and that's when this thing starting to rush itself. Once we meet Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker in his version, and this somehow the kid, like 5-year-old version of Peter, like I think 10, yeah. I think he's like 10 in the flashback, in the opening scene, seems more like what we expect Peter Parker to be like before he becomes Spider-Man. However, for the main actor, it's the other way around. Like, he's already acting more like Spider-Man than Peter Parker before he could become Spider-Man. Look, the first one did a shitty job, but how did you miss the mark worse? How did you miss the mark worse than the first one did? It's like, wow, the really want to hammer in that this is Spider-Man before he even gets the costumes or the powers. And that's a problem, I say. Because we won't see because the transformation of him going from coming out of his shell and transforming into the role of becoming a responsible adult, young adult, while coming out of his shell as Peter through Spider-Man. It's not as noticeable as it was in the first one from 2002. Well, gets to your, it doesn't, because this, he's written like he's Peter, and it's written before he gets the powers. He's written too bold. Like, they give him his balls too early on in the film, and they don't make him a wimp enough at all. Everyone else is perfectly servable and fine, or more or less, but he's how it's written is like, it's just not, you don't do this like this. It's like bad pacing, bad writing, and when he stands on the bully, the pacing and editing and in terms of the story, like, you feel like there's more scenes missing out as the film goes on once you meet him, you know? And it feels like it's rushing you after we pass a certain point in Peter's life. It wants to rush it faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, and so fast you can't understand what the whole point of this is. Of telling this story again in another shitty light. Somehow they did worse than dropped in 2002's version. Was the origin? So it's amazing. Amazingly dumb. So yeah, Kirk Connors injects himself with serum. This is the same Peter Parker gets bitten by a spider, nosing through lab, stealing a hall pass from an intern, sneaking into the lab to look at spiders to undiscover the truth about his missing whereabouts of his parents / his parents' death. Stumbles into Kirk Connors. Kirk Connors becomes friends with Peter. Kirk Connors turns himself into Liz by injecting Liz's DNA, which somehow grows his arm back, while also turning him into a Liz and mutating himself and make him act all crazy and Liz-like. Peter figured out to put two and two together after a date with his girlfriend Gwen, and has to put a stop to and take masses only because the cops won't let him because they're clueless dumbasses and fucking lazy. They won't listen to Peter because he tries going to the cops, so the cops won't help. So he takes matters in his own hands. The cops do help him in the end. And yep. So, he follows him into the sewers, Kirk Connors, with the army of lizards that he's making babies of. and playing with his phone. Draws Kirk Carnes into traps, loses his camera. Kirk Carnes attacks on school, turns into his costume, changes into his costume. Things happen. Oh, and Peter saying that convinced Gwen that he loves her and that he's Spider-Man. Blah, 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 blah. And the cops are on Spider-Man's tail while Spider-Man's trying to save the day, blah, blah, blah. Gets shot, blah, blah, blah. Fixed his wound and heals it at the last minute, blah, blah, blah. This one all hope seems lost, blah, blah, blah. But then the people he helped along the way decide to help him, blah, blah, blah. Even when he's surrounded by fucking several buildings that can just web to. But no, they have to give him a crush. I mean, a helping hand, blah, blah, blah. Therefore, the score starts playing, blah, blah, blah. This is supposed to be the incredible, triumphant moment, blah, blah, blah. I guess when all hope seems lost, blah, blah, blah. Spider-Man saves the day by stopping everyone turning to live by engineer the machine and switching with human DNA from lizard DNA, so blah, blah, blah. With science off screen. And Gwen's father figures out he's Spider-Man at taking his mask off. He goes to help Peter. And because he likes Peter, I guess, and says Peter's not alone, blah, blah, blah. That's when Peter all holds it on, but when Peter's getting lectured how he's alone and all his scars, blah, 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 blah. While getting his ass handed and almost killed, blah, blah, blah. Bob Shoes destroyed, blah, blah, blah. He comes in the last minute to shoot Connors, blah, blah, and gives Peter the upper hand. Connors gets stabbed, while Peter switches, re-engineers the, fix the machine, so people don't turn into lizards, but just turn all back into humans instead. The ones who got turned into lizards and the ones who are already humans don't get effective somehow. He figured out the signs off screen somehow. Who cares? So, Connors gets stabbed for the chest. Then, Connors gets turned back to human after stabbing the Gwen's father for the chest, killing him, and more than him, and having him bleed out to death. And having promised Peter to fucking cut ties with Gwen and leave her out of the Spider-Man life. So Spider-Man does do that, and does see by not coming to his funeral, by coming to his funeral by in the shadows, blah, blah, blah. And Connors gets arrested, thrown into prison in the psychiatric, blah, blah, blah. And the Shadow figure reappears and disappears, telling that he will take care of the boy. And Connors tells him to leave the boy alone, referring to Peter. Because even though, like, Connors told him the truth about his father's disappearance and death, blah, blah, blah. He's going to take care of Peter, he's, like I said, and kill him or something, blah, blah, blah. And leads into the Amazing Spider-Man 2, blah, blah, blah. On that cliffhanger. And Spider-Man, is confronted by Gwen, yada, yada, yada. With serious monologuing, yada, 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 yada. Because she figured out 2 and 2 together, that the promise he made to her father's dying words. And he teases that Gwen and the audience saying, yeah, those secrets are the best kind, by teasing they're going to get back together by the sequel comes, so blah, blah, blah. While giving his final swing to the audience, blah, blah, blah. In slow motion. No. And therefore, that's the end of the film. Uncle Ben dies, gets shot up because he tried to tackle the guy with a gun. Instead of running for his life, he just me a break for. He decides to try to steal the gun from the guy. He ends up shooting, getting shot. Blah 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 blah. Spider goes on revenge. Blah blah blah. Finds goes point A to point B. Finds Kirk Connors livid and then gives up on the whole vigilante thing. Blah blah. Yeah, it's one of those films. This is. Fuck. I'll give this a 1 out of 10, only being slightly better than the original story with McGuire from 2002. So yeah, I give this a 1 out of 10. It'll only be, think, a major improvement, even though it's a piece of shit. Like some of the ideas and some of the things in there, like the costume. But it's just really rushed, You just wonder why would I want to go see that again? As years go on, you wonder what's the point of that? What's the point? What's the point indeed? Blah blah yada yada blah blah blah. Blah is what I have to say about the Amazing Spider-Man from 2012. So yeah, that's because 1 out of 10. So it's shit. That's my thoughts.